there any proof Jesus existed outside the Bible?
Now, what else did Luke write about? And did you know that just 20 years ago, some people doubted that even Jesus existed? Now we have proof from non-Christian writers during the time of Jesus, including many references by Jewish rabbis who didn't like Jesus. Here's a list. I know, it makes Bart Ehrman and others look like idiots. Hey, but I'm not the one who said Jesus didn't exist. But let me point something out. The New Testament said there was a sudden darkness during the crucifixion around 3 p.m. Now, Thales, writing in 52 AD, doesn't believe in God, but he says that there's a logical explanation to the darkness. He says there was a solar eclipse, not some miracle. Another ancient writer, Phlegon, says, yeah, there must have been a solar eclipse at the time of Jesus' crucifixion. And there are other ancient writers saying, no, you can't have a solar eclipse during a full moon. Now, I don't care who's right. That's not my point. But during this first century debate, no one is saying Jesus never existed or the darkness never happened. They're just trying to find the logical explanation to what happened. Another example is Josephus, the Jewish historian. He was more focused on the Jewish relations with the Romans, but he mentions John the Baptist and adds some detail that the Bible doesn't mention. But everything he says about John the Baptist agrees with the New Testament. And later, in Antiquities Book 18, Josephus writes that Jesus was a wise man. Yeah, obviously he doesn't believe that Jesus is the Son of God. But as a historian, he writes about Jesus, the so-called Christ, who was judged by Pilate and sent to be crucified. In 112 AD, Governor Pliny the Younger is having second thoughts about killing and persecuting Christians because they were so moral. And what he writes about them agrees with the New Testament. He writes that lots of Christians were killed, but if they were Roman citizens, they were sent to Rome to have a trial. Another agreement is Christians believed Jesus to be a god. Some women in the church had positions of leadership, unlike Rome. Christianity was bad business for temples and Roman religion. Now, this isn't strong proof for the existence of Jesus, but once again, it shows that the New Testament is historically accurate. Another proof comes from Tacitus, a proconsul and persecutor of Christians. He said that Christianity was a disease started by Christus, who was sentenced to death under Pontius Pilate. Suetonius, another hater of Christianity, also mentions Christ. A few people made it a big deal because he misspelled it as Chrestus. But if you read it in context, they expelled the Jews because of Chrestus. If you know history, the emperor deported these Jewish Christians from Rome in 49 AD. This event was what Suetonius was talking about. Another hater of Jesus, Lucian of Samosata, wrote that these awful Christians worshipped their original lawgiver, calling him a crucified sage. Yes, all these haters confirmed the existence of Jesus. But the ones who hated him most were the first century Jewish rabbis. They would call Jesus illegitimate, bastard, son of a leopard, deceiver. I'm not going to list them all here. Let me just note that a few rabbis say that Jesus was hanged. Now, that's not a contradiction to the Bible, because as opposed to being stoned, the normal mode, Jesus was hanged on a cross. And some rabbis accuse Jesus of sorcery, but Jesus did not do magic. He did miracles. But isn't it ironic that thousands of years later, it's these haters that prove the existence of Jesus, while people ignore what the lovers of Jesus wrote about him? And skeptics used to say that Nazareth didn't exist in the first century. I understand why. The Old Testament lists the towns of Zebulun, and Nazareth isn't on the list. The historian Josephus lists 45 towns in Galilee, and Nazareth isn't on the list. The Jewish Talmud lists 63 towns, and Nazareth isn't on the list. And then in 1962, they found the Nazareth inscription, which proves its existence in the first century. Nazareth was so small, less than 100 people, it just wasn't listed before. Yeah, today no one doubts that Jesus grew up in Nazareth, but I'm just saying, Luke was right, even before archaeology proved him right. Recently, archaeologists discovered that Pontius Pilate did judge Jesus. They found the ossuary of James, son of Joseph, brother of Jesus. They found the pool of Bethesda and the pool of Siloam. Recently, They even found the bones of Caiaphas the high priest who judged Jesus. Archaeology shows us things even the Bible doesn't talk about. Jesus didn't invent parables. Other Jewish rabbis used them in the first century. And 3 wise men on camels? No, archaeology says these were royalty on horses. The church got it wrong. Jesus grew up in Nazareth, a poor and tiny town. The disciple Peter's house in Capernaum was huge, says archaeology, not humble and modest, as tradition says. But archaeology shows that the New Testament is historically reliable, a historical document that archaeologists use as a handbook to make even more discoveries. Now, archaeology is not going to prove every detail and every date, but a lot. So yes, you can see Luke's writings as a historical document, but it's not just the past. It talks about the future, your future. You wanna know what it says? You should go read it for yourself. Wow, this one required the most research and interviews and so many different libraries because I wanted to take actual pictures of the primary sources, what it actually says in Greek. Well, thanks for watching, but I learned a lot, and please comment below. And if you disagree, show me actual research.